Yeah, and tonight's show has been brought to you in part by wine. Red wine for being our host this evening. Our guest this evening is a major treat, my jungle junkies. He's known as an adventurer, author, motivational speaker, youth developer, and of course, my favorite title, extreme conservationist.
That's the one that grabs me.
Yeah, I love that, man. That's great. Aside from being on the front lines of the South African Ivory Wars, our guest this evening has achieved so many spectacular feats, including running the entire length of the Wall of China, the Great Wall of China, people. Do you understand what kind of a feat that is? Not only that, he's also run along the entire South African coast and has even raced to the South Pole on basically the name of making the world a better place.
Did he run on the water? I mean, how did that happen?
We're going to find out.
Is the man Jesus?
He is definitely, I would look to him as a savior, that's for sure, because he is definitely trying to make a difference in the world, and that's what we love here at Urban Jungles Radio. So, Jungle Junkies across the globe, it is my extreme pleasure to introduce you all to the one and only Braam Malherbe. Braam, are you with us?
I'm right there, Danny.
Yay, Braam! Braam, I am so excited. I mean, you are just amazing. I got to tell you, I have been knee-deep in Braam over the last few days, learning all about everything you've done. You truly lived such an amazing life, and from what I've learned from you, it's incredibly inspiring at the same time. I have to ask you right off the bat, I mean, what drove you to want to make such a huge impact in the world and bring change about?
Danny, hey, I think really for me it's about the gift of giving. You know, most people in life it's about take. It's about consumption. It's about greed. And essentially the world's tired, you know. We need to be putting back. It's not just about taking, it's about what we've got to put back. And I think that for me is the biggest thing. And, you know, I've been an ardent conservationist, and I know you're a zoologist as well. Mm-hmm. And you understand the whole concept of biodiversity. We're going through one of the greatest extinctions the Earth has ever known, literally mass extinctions because of predominantly habitat destruction.
Right.
And if all of us can just start putting a little something back, you know, it's not about doing huge things, it's just about each of us just doing one small thing each day, and that can turn things around in my view.
Yeah, we definitely have to explore this because I love this concept of do one thing, which is, you know, we've abbreviated as DOT. If some of you have seen us promoting DOT, this is what it's all about. Braam has this wonderful theory that I hope he'll tell us a little bit about. Tell us about do one thing.
Danny, the DOT is basically, I do a small TV show in South Africa, a nature show, a nature program, and I say there, and I quote, our planet's just a dot in the universe. I mean, if you think of that, we're just a little small speck. I mean, I think it was Carl Sagan that said a mote of dust in the universe. But if each of us on our planet, we're effectively dots, if you think of it in that perspective from space. But if each of us, and we take DOT as an acronym, as you said, we all do one thing, collectively we can reshape the planet's future. And I really mean that. For 7 billion people, we look at it as a negative, and I suppose in some respects it is. But putting back, just each of us doing something small, I think we suffer from what I call emotional impotency. You know, oh, climate change, oh, wow, man, it's too big, we can't change anything, we can't do anything, but we can. And we don't have to do massive things. It's about turning the tap off when you shave in the morning, if you're a guy, that is. Ladies, it's about small things. And, you know, checking the seal on your refrigerator, switching your computer off at night, not just letting it stand in sleep mode. Lots and lots of little things can seriously make a huge impact on all of our futures. And indeed, that futures for the biodiversity of all species.
Right. I mean, I get that all the time. People are always wanting to know, what can we do? What can we do? And of course, as you know, it's really hard to commit to something big. I mean, people unfortunately have to deal with the trials and tribulations of everyday life, you know, work and children and things like that keep us busy. But I love this concept so much. Do one thing every day. If you can do just one little tiny thing along the lines of what Braam just said, it truly does make a difference. I mean, with so many people in the world, I mean, with just 1 million people disconnecting every night, that alone would make such a huge impact on our energy consumption, and even just the act of disconnecting, which is a wonderful act in itself. We're way too reliant on the internet and things of that nature. So it is such a spectacular message, and I absolutely love that, Braam. One of your many spectacular messages, I have to say. Can you tell I have a total man crush on
I
you?
was in Johannesburg yesterday, and here's really great news, and I was just blown away by this. We're actually launching a Dot app, which is going to be free download by November this year, and I saw the whole prototype yesterday. Free download. You were talking about going on holiday. I wish I could say that 3 weeks away, the two of you. But it's amazing. There are 8 categories on that app, and essentially those categories are, or if we can hook into any one of them, it's energy, it's waste, it's air, it's water, it's conservation, it's animal welfare, different of course to conservation because it's about not using things tested on animal vivisection, things like that. It's agriculture and education. And on education, I mean educating people to think differently, not your school type education. And you can click on any of those things on the app to get examples of dots. You log in. This is kind of going to be the Facebook for conservation or biodiversity, if you like.
That's so exciting. It's such a great concept, and especially embracing technology, which most of us do. It's a great way to kind of reach the masses. We have so many things to talk about in so little time, but I have to tell you one thing really quick. Since I've watched your videos, I've stopped wearing shoes. I just want you to know I'm barefoot all the time now.
Awesome.
If you know Braam, if you know anything about Danny, he hates being barefoot. He hates feet, so he's always got to have his feet covered. And, I applaud you for this. Good job.
Braam got me to take off my shoes and show my feet to the world.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. I mean, on television here, the reason I do that is it's kind of, I do walk around barefoot. You can do that in Africa. I think walking around the streets of New York City might not be the cleanest thing around. I mean, I was there last year with my good friend Lynn Davis, who lives in New York. And, I really wouldn't want to walk around too much bare feet and dirty feet.
No.
But,
The
the soil's pretty clean. And for me, it's a symbolic thing, guys, because it's we've kind of lost our connection with the planet, So barefoot walking on the beach or walking on the mountains where I live, you kind of connect with the planet.
Oh, totally. I love it. I mean, just these little simple concepts of bringing things along. And Andy likes that because Andy likes feet. So, he wants more women to have their feet.
No offense, Braam, but I'm not a big fan of your feet because they're probably just concrete at this point.
I don't think anyone should be a fan of my feet, to be honest.
Oh boy. All right. So obviously you have to tell us a little bit about some of the conservation work you're doing now. You have what is possibly, from what I've seen, the most spectacular back and front yard I have ever seen. Tell us a little bit about your home and what you do there.
I live very fortunately in the Table Mountain National Park. Table Mountain has just been recently voted as one of the 7 natural wonders of the world. I've lived here for 27 years, and I must say I think I've got one of the most spectacular views in the world. My sunrise, I look down over the beautiful city if I want to get that close to the edge of the yard. But I look out at Table Mountain on the one side, and then that's in the east, and then I walk across my yard over the lawn, and I look down over Robben Island, which is the prison of Nelson Mandela.
Right.
And in fact, I was there when I ran the coastline of South Africa to celebrate his 90th birthday, and that was 2008. And we ran 90 kilometers around Robben Island, which is about 6.5 laps each, David and myself. That ran the coastline with me. We ran out from his cell, from his prison cell, holding the South African flag, and we ran in celebration of his birthday around the island. So that's my view from the other side. So kind of the height that I'm at is, I don't know what it is in feet, but I mean, it's pretty high. I kind of have the last sunset, as the sun sets over Sea Point, which is on that boundary, I have the last sunset in Cape Town, probably in South Africa, actually.
Wow, that's so spectacular. Obviously, very inspirational in itself. What were one of the biggest influences in your life as far as the direction that you've taken?
One of the big influences in my life has been failure. In 1984, I was declared insolvent. I lost absolutely everything. My dad died the same year from having suffered his second stroke. My fiancée left me, and I was kind of empty. I had nothing. And in that nothingness, I kind of found everything. It's about, again, coming back to that point, the gift of giving. You know, the more you give, the more you get. And I'm not necessarily coming from a religious bias, because I respect Muslim people, Christian people, atheists, agnostics. We all have opinions. But it's a natural principle. You know, what you reap, you sow. And, you know, for me, being a custodian of this planet is integral to my own personal growth and evolution. And in the motivational speeches that I give, I speak about the power of change. And I'm testament to that. You know, if we stay the same, we don't evolve. And Danny, you'll know that.
Yes.
In terms of evolutionary processes from a zoological perspective. If you prepare to change, that's how we survive. Nature, I mean, we're currently, as I mentioned, facing the greatest mass extinction on this planet, where between 60 and 110,000 species are going extinct per annum. And the ones that are surviving are the ones that are already adapting to climate change, to poisons that we spray on our crops and things like that. That's what survives. And when we embrace that process and say, hang on, what can I do? And again, it goes back to Dot. You know, what can I do to change my own process of life and put back rather than just take? And that's when we truly grow. And for me, that's been my, I suppose, eureka moment.
Yeah, I've watched your lectures, and you made such an important point in that, you know, nature in itself, the laws of nature, the intrinsic laws of nature define that it's all about giving and relationships. I mean, everything gives to something else on this planet to keep it going and keep it going in the way it is. And humans tend to be the exception to that, aren't they?
I think humans, you know, one of the things I said recently in a speech in Johannesburg is we're an exception to that, but where did it come from? I mean, our parents, with all greatest loving intentions, taught us from a survival perspective in our formative years certain words out of protection. No, don't do that. You can't. Put that down. That's stupid. It's impossible. And you know what? My whole mantra in life, nothing is impossible. If you take the word impossible and you separate it after the second letter, it says, I'm possible. I'm possible. So, you know, for me, I was asked, and I don't, again, come from a religious bias in making this statement. I was asked by the media in South Africa, after running the Great Wall of China, if I believed in sin. That's kind of a weird question from the media. Yeah. And I said, for me, if there's such a thing, it's one word, it's mediocrity. It's living a half-life. It's a compromised existence. You know, we're destined, every human being is destined to do really, really great things. And I don't see myself as some kind of a hero. I mean, one of the things I really emphasize strongly, and I mean this, you know, Andy, Danny, very sincerely, I'm an ordinary guy. Ordinary people can do extraordinary things, and the difference between ordinary and extraordinary is that word extra. It's the little extra you put in that, for me, makes the difference long term.
Absolutely. It's a shame that, you know, that's the thing is we need to extend that little bit extra all the time. And that's kind of the gist of getting people to do that is the tricky part for sure. I mean, obviously in South Africa, you are on the front lines of the Ivory Wars for sure. I mean, I know that you work very hard to protect the South African rhinos and, you know, work on undoing what poachers are doing. What can you tell us a little bit about, you know, what you've seen in the ivory trade and you know, what you've seen in rhinos in South Africa and what the situation is like? It seems pretty dire. I mean, obviously I fall victim to a lot of, you know, media. I have to take the information on secondhand as opposed to you who's actually there seeing this. But from what I've seen, it seems that the situation is very, very dire, especially for rhinos.
It is, Danny, and just a small thing, if you don't mind. The ivory is the elephant, and the rhino horn is not ivory, and I think a lot of people don't make that distinction, so it's a good thing in a sense that you brought that up. Ivory trade in Africa has been spiked hugely, because what two countries did, Kenya and Tanzania, they had stockpiles of ivory, and they decided to do a once-off sale of that stockpile, thinking that it would bring a lot of money into conservation in the respective countries. And they put a reserve price on that ivory, and they sold the ivory to two countries, namely Japan and China, thinking that those two countries would bid against each other, thus driving the price up. But they didn't. Japan and China colluded, and they came in and they took all of the ivory at that reserve price. And then they controlled that trade. in those countries, and they slowly trickled it into the market, very much like the diamond trade does out of South Africa. It's a controlled trade. And they then inflated the price dramatically, which drove poaching up in Africa of elephants. And as you know, you can't harvest ivory. You've got to kill the poor animals first. And we're looking, I was at CITES in Bangkok a few months ago, which is COP17. It's Conservation International Trade in Endangered Species. We're looking at 25,000 elephants are currently being butchered per annum in Africa, which is horrific. Now, having said that, the rhino horn issue is worse, not in terms of numbers, because the number of rhinos being killed, butchered I call it, because I have sat with dying rhinos, and it really does bring tears to your eyes, and I mean that sincerely. I mean, last year alone, I saw 38 carcasses, and we had to put down, euthanize, a whole lot of little calves, because 2-3 big calves, that picture that you put up in your site, many of these calves don't live because they're dehydrated. The mother is only found a few days later, and the calves cry. I mean, they cry, they go, "Wah!" and they make these little noises, you know. But where it's different from ivory, it's not near the same numbers, but there are way, 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 way less rhinos. So what happened is we had an average of about 19 rhinos poached per annum in 2008 and prior to that, which was manageable. 2009 it jumped to 148, 2010 333, 2011 448, and 2012 last year 668. So from 2010 to 2012, from 333 to 668, it doubled. This year, we're already sitting on over 400. So we'll have double by the end of the year again. And this is fueled because of the Asian market demand out of Laos, Vietnam, and China. And I was in Beijing in China last year. And I spoke to a Chinese professor in Chinese medicine, and she said, yes, we need to educate the Asian markets, but to try and turn traditional medicine on its head before you've lost your last rhino is pretty much impossible. So yes, treating trying to educate the Asian markets. I actually met with Jackie Chan when I was over there.
Nice.
Awesome guy. And I said to him, why don't you become a patron of Save South Africa's rhino?
Yeah.
Because South Africa, I don't know if you're aware of this, is saving or assisting to save the South China tiger. We are breeding the tiger in a project in South Africa.
Oh.
He said, well, we've got to talk to the government, and nothing much has come of that. In my view, and it's quite a controversial statement, Danny, if we don't look at legalizing trade in rhino horn, we will have an extinct species. We won't have the big five in Africa inside of the next decade. What do I mean by that? This is an important point. We have natural mortality rhino horn, 5 tons plus of it, and rhino horn is selling to the Asian markets currently at $60,000 per kilogram.
Oh my God!
That's
Good Lord.
worth more than gold. And CITES banned the trade in rhino horn in 1977, and since that ban, over 80,000 rhinos have been butchered. And if we can trickle that trade like the diamond trade, in other words, we control it out of South Africa. It's not like the ivory thing that happened where it was a stockpile and it was a once-off sale. We can meet the demand very, very easily out of South Africa. We're sitting with 20,000 living rhinos, but this year, 2013, we're seeing the tipping point where more animals are dying than calves being born. And then it's a quick downward spiral, as you know.
Right. Oh, that's so heartbreaking. I've been very lucky to enjoy the presence of wild rhinos. I spent some time in Kenya and Tanzania, and it really is heartbreaking. I've seen some of your pictures, and the stuff that you have personally seen is really horrific. I mean, I think people don't grasp the concept of how barbarian this is and how horrific it is. And, recently, I'm going to have to put it up, Andy, if you can get it up in a little while, I'll give you the link. Braam has put together a wonderful, wonderful paper outlining some of the things that we can do or we should do to help the rhinos. And I urge you guys to all watch it. But obviously, as you mentioned, one of the more controversial aspects of this is legalizing the rhino horn. And I'm so glad you said that. At first, I have to admit, I was a little hesitant about the whole idea of selling, opening the market up for rhino horns in general. But after reading some of the stuff that you've done, and of course, a previous guest of ours, Damien Mander, who's really amazing, also has the same stance, I'm starting to see the light. And I think you're right. I think it would be, at this point, we've definitely reached the epidemic point and a point of desperation. And I think we need to take all the steps necessary to prevent this at this point, because it's really reached a point that's very scary.
It is very scary. I don't like to see a rhino without its horn. Having said that, I was witness to a horrific scene, a little game reserve up on the east coast of South Africa called Kariga. And I got there, drove in to witness two rhino, a bull and a cow, trying to stand up after the M99 drug, this drug that a lot of the poachers use, because it's much quieter shooting a dart to anesthetize the animal as opposed to a high-powered rifle, which of course alerts the rangers. And these two animals were trying to stand up as they were coming out of this anesthetic. You can imagine the pain. Their horns, their whole noses had been hacked to pieces with pungas. These are like machetes. And they were trying to stand up. There was another bull which didn't come out of the anesthetic. It died, and possibly, thank goodness that it died because of this. You can't imagine the pain. And I was just in tears. I was in absolute tears. Anyone that could see this would be in the same position. In fact, I've got that footage. And then people argue the point with me. A lot of the private rhino owners, most of the private rhino owners in South Africa, which incidentally account for about 20 to 25% of all living rhinos left, all of those owners dehorn their animals. Now, just for your listeners, there's no pain involved. The animal is anesthetized, they take the horn off, there's still a stump, and it's like your fingernail. It grows back, very rapidly, in fact. They have to dehorn every 18 to 24 months. So all of the animals are dehorned, and someone once said to me, I'd rather see a rhino dead than be dehorned. Well, I think that is just a scandalous, it's a terrible thing to say, because on the other side of this road, there was a fence. There's a road there's a public road that cuts through this reserve. And on the other side of that road, there were two bull rhinos that were dehorned, grazing very peacefully, completely unaware of what was happening to their sister and brother on the other side of the road. And all I know is that if I were a rhino, I know which side of the road I'd like to be on. And I need to see it in that context, You can harvest rhino horn 10 to 12 times in the animal's lifetime with no ill effect on the animal at all. And people speak about, we think of Africa as all of this wild game. Yes, but what sustains conservation in Africa, and this is not me speaking, this is peer-reviewed papers that I'm talking about, is what they call sustainable utilization of wildlife. We farm ostrich for feathers, for feather dusters, for meat. We farm springbok for meat, for venison. And venison, incidentally, if you are going to eat meat, is way more healthy for you than eating the poor beef that go into the abattoirs and are slaughtered in sometimes horrific ways, and they're full of antibiotics and growth hormones and so on. We farm crocodile and so on. And farming these animals allows the wild animals to remain safe from poachers. And I think we need to see that as a bigger picture. There was a guy, Anton Rupert, a great conservationist, and he made an amazing statement. He said, conservation without money is conversation.
Very nice.
If it pays, it stays. If it pays, it stays. And that's how conservation works.
Unbelievable. I am personally so glad to have people like you on the front of this who, are able to be forward thinking enough to help the animals, just because it is a crazy situation. And this is literally something that keeps me up at night. The whole rhino situation is so scary to me, because my biggest fear is, I have 3 children, and I want to bring my children to Africa soon to be able to enjoy the things that I did when I was there. And it scares me to death that by the time they're old enough to travel and go, there might not be these animals for them to see, and as a zoologist, I know this is a little contradictory, but I don't want to introduce my kids to a rhino at a zoo. I want my children to enjoy the splendor of these wild animals. And it's really, really scary. But having people like you on the front is definitely a comfort. So thank you so much, Braam, for what you do for these animals. It's really a relief to know that people who actually care about it and are forward thinking are there for that. I want to move on to something a little more positive because I'm feeling really bummed out right now.
Yeah,
Sorry, Andy. This is just it's really horrible. But like I said, I'm glad this is something that needs to be addressed. This is not something that we need to hide our heads about, and we need to be much more proactive if we want to save our rhinos because the numbers are just crazy. I mean, as you just stated, that we are at epidemic level this year especially. So please, people, educate yourself about what will work and let's do everything we can to help these perennials because I mean we can't lose them. They're too beautiful and too much of an important part of our ecosystem to be lost. So all right, we'll move on. Obviously I need to talk to you about this because this is just mind-blowing to me. Now, the Great Wall of China is one of the few man-made creations or artifacts that is so immense it can actually be seen from space. I have to ask you, what was it like taking on the challenge of running the distance of the Great Wall of China? And at this point, were you told that you couldn't run? Or was this afterwards?
Exactly that. Great Wall of China, the distance that, and I'm sorry I don't have this in miles because I know you guys.
No, it's okay. We'll work it out.
Kilometers.
Americans screw everything up anyway.
We basically ran, David Greer, my friend in South Africa, and myself, we ran basically 4,200 kilometers. And we had to do that in order to complete this journey in time. And what I mean by time is we were running against the clock from a season perspective. We were running in the Gobi Desert in autumn, and we had to finish because you can't run there in summer, obviously, because it's too hot. But we were running against the Siberian winter that was coming down from the north, so we had to finish before it hit the minus 30s. So we ran 4,200 kilometers, but we had to push it at the pace of a marathon a day. Over some of the harshest terrain on the planet. So we had altitudes of 4,000 meters, minus 22 degrees Celsius, and in the Gobi Desert, 42 degrees plus Celsius, over some really, really harsh terrain. But I think really it's a world first in terms of that accomplishment. But again, ordinary guy maybe doing some extraordinary things. And the reason for that, Danny and Andy, is I believe that gift of giving, if you have a purpose that's beyond just your ego, that's beyond just me, myself, I, then it gets you through tough times. I'd lost all my toenails in the Gobi Desert, and I just pushed on through. And the reason for that is I took on a charity. And that charity, very, very dear to my heart. I'm the ambassador in South Africa, and you'll know it well in America, Operation Smile. Yep. Founded in America, and basically, these are the kids that are born with predominantly cleft lip and cleft palate disfigurements. And that run of the Great Wall of China was to raise enough money for the first, or what they call a mission, a group of operations. The inaugural mission in South Africa in 2006, September, was 54 children getting these operations in South Africa for the first time. And subsequent to that, we've now raised, and when I say we, it's not just myself and David, it's the broader South African public, and indeed anyone that volunteers their time or puts financial contribution to it, enough for over 1,000 children now to have had operations. And I can say emphatically, those kids got me through. When you're going through tough times and you're in pain and you put up your little pup tent in the desert and the wind's howling and you just think, what the heck am I doing here? And you think, if I go another day, maybe another kid smiles for the first time. And that, for me, is the most important thing.
I have to applaud you, Braam. That's amazing. An amazing feat for sure. And it didn't stop there. My man ran the entire South African coast for the Run a Smile program, right?
That's correct, yeah. That was about 3,270 kilometers. And if you picture South Africa, it's kind of like the shape of a smile.
Right.
Running the coastline. Yeah.
And it's not just like, keeping the ocean to your right and just running, straight out. There's some amazing terrain out there. It's no easy feat by far.
Like Forrest Gump running.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like flat running through,
Yeah, run, Forrest, run.
Run, Braam, run. Yeah, I like that. And that just pales in comparison, from what I've learned, to your experience in the South Pole. I mean, you want to talk about absurd. Please tell us a little bit about this. You took on an incredible incredibly intense challenge in a race to the South Pole. I mean, why the hell would a South African go to the South Pole?
That's a very good point, especially a barefoot South African.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, let's face it, this is a complete... I mean, you don't even get snow in South Africa, right?
We do, but then you've got to climb higher mountains to go and experience, that cold and pretty white stuff. But I'm not a cold person, as you say. I enjoy the heat. I like going to tropical islands and being in the desert and understanding nature in the desert. But I must say, having said all that, it is an experience that was unbelievable. Unbelievable. We were, a lot of people think of the South Pole and the North Pole is kind of the same thing. It's very, very different. The Arctic, the North, that's where the polar bears are. A lot of people say, did you see polar bears? There are no polar bears down south. You'll know that, but a lot of people don't know that. But the North, the Arctic is predominantly frozen sea ice, and therefore pretty much sea level-ish. The South Pole, on the high plateau, is equivalent, not in geographical height, but because of the Coriolis force and the spin of the Earth and the denseness of the ice. The average thickness, incidentally, in the South Pole, the average thickness of the ice is 3 kilometers thick. And it holds 70% of all the Earth's fresh water. 70%. All of that fresh water of our planet sits in the South Pole. In Antarctica. So when we acclimatize for 6 days, going through the mountains and the crevasse fields and so on, you are basically ending up at thin air equivalent to the highest mountain in Africa being Kilimanjaro. Right. So you have to go through that acclimatization phase. Now, when you're on that high plateau, it is absolutely and utterly barren. There's not a grain of sand. There's not a bird. There is literally no life whatsoever. It is totally sterile. There's literally not even bacteria in the ice. So you have nothingness around you 360 degrees. During our race, it was 24 days. And for us, it was a race against time because it was about climate change. Mm-hmm. So it was, but spectacular. And to try and explain it, it's like you're in the last great wilderness on Earth because it's so inhospitable. Right. Average temperature minus 45 degrees Celsius. It's an unassisted race, guys, and you're basically pulling 85 kilograms behind you. I'm not sure what that is in pounds. And you're pulling this weight unassisted in commemoration of Robert Falcon Scott, the British chap and his team, and Roald Amundsen, the first guys in 1911, 1912 to reach the South Pole. So this was the centenary race. 100 years after these guys, we were in their footsteps, so to speak, but we didn't have the Huskies, as mentioned, unassisted. That in hindsight, I look back on this, and the experience is it's breathtaking, it's unbelievable, because to be able to move across the ice like that and literally support yourself, and my very, very close friend Peter van Ketz, and I did that for climate change, and we didn't do it as a race to beat the Norwegians because that's completely ludicrous. I mean, they're skiing, as you know, when they're about 4 years old. Right. And they trained for 3 years for this event. We still came in third, which wasn't half bad for us barefoot South African guys. But we weren't barefoot there. But it's just what a wonderful experience. And at the South Pole, what we did, and we had the first 1,000 coins on climate change in the world that were flown into the Scott Amundsen base, the American base, at the pole. And then we had the privilege of overstriking, they call it, the 90-degree south seal on these first 1,000 coins on climate change, which was amazing feeling.
You know what I love about this, though, Andy? You have to understand, right? It's going to the South Pole alone, it's a feat in itself. Yeah. But from what I read about your experience there, Braam, you landed and raced under what could possibly be the worst conditions imaginable for a person to endure. I mean, let's put it this way. My man, he's racing on this distance. If you sweat, you die.
Right.
It's no joke.
Yeah, because it freezes against you.
Right, that's crazy. And you did actually get some frostbite and pneumonia, I believe, too, right? In the process.
Yeah, I got pneumonia. I believe in the power of the mind. I really do think that the mind can heal the body, and in my case, that proved to be true. Thank goodness. Otherwise, I wouldn't be having this conversation with you guys. But I think for me, what was the most spectacular in this race is the British. There were 7 teams from 6 nations. And why 7? Because the Brits put in 2 teams to try and outdo the Norwegians, and they didn't come close. But what happened is the first British team was flown out. The guys got pneumonia. It was a casualty emergency evacuation. They had to get an aircraft in to get this guy out of there. And the second British team, the one bloke broke his arm, and they decided they couldn't go on. And they were automatically disqualified because they had to send an Arctic truck out there to drive about 14 hours to get to these blokes. And they were moved forward to a compulsory stop. The halfway mark, there's one stop in the race. And they were disqualified, obviously, because the minute there's any assistance, you're disqualified. And they decided they wanted to continue regardless. And they did, but what happened is they were a 3-man team. Pete and myself, only a 2-man team. The other 2 guys... Jason Bolton and Ben took Andrew Carney's kit and put them into their pulks. Your pulk is your sled, basically. Mm-hmm. And they carried his extra weight so he could move with lightweight. He carried the sleeping bags and so on. And we caught up with them, and they realized they couldn't pull this extra weight, and they were going to call in for another evacuation, and they were going to be out of the race. Well, they were out anyway, but they wanted to finish regardless. And then Pete and I took a risk, I guess, and we decided to help them. And a risk because we were going to carry some of their weight. And under those conditions, 5 kilograms is a lot of extra weight. You feel it. I mean, I came home weighing 66 kilograms. I was anorexic.
Oh, my God.
You lose half a kilogram. You lose about half a kilogram of body weight per day. And Pete and I took this risk, and I said to Pete, you know what, Pete, sometimes when you help people that are less advantageous to you, it makes you psychologically stronger. And we took 13 kilograms each off the Brits and put them on our pulks, and we raced to the pole together. And we made the cutoff because of a storm system that was coming in. In 24 days of racing, we made it, the 5 of us, with 90 minutes to spare.
Oh my God!
And that was, but it was the most awesome experience to stand around the world. Because if you can picture it, you're standing around the pole, you're standing around the Earth, you're surrounding the planet. And we stood around here with around this pole with this thick white icicles in our beards, and we just all hugged each other. And we all had tears in our eyes, which pretty much freeze instantly, so you can't really afford to cry at the South Pole. But what a day, what a day. And then last year I was fortunate to go to the Oscars of extreme sport in London. And we were all in our tuxedos, and I saw these guys, and Pete saw these guys, and they came up to us, and we all did a sort of, now we all kind of macho, and we're not struggling anymore, and we all hug each other, we do this kind of circle hug, and we all had tears in our eyes. And for me, it's about that. It's about the power of friendship in adversity. And our next challenge, which Pete and I are doing, is September 2014. We're doing a circumnavigation of the planet around Capricorn, around the Tropic of Capricorn, unassisted. So sailing, mountain biking. It's 14 months away from home, so it's a long time. But for me, it's about that. It's called Earth Challenge. Capri X, Capricorn Extreme, Capri X Earth Challenge. And it's about uniting people around the world. We've even designed an Earth flag. So not a South African flag or an American flag, whatever. It's, yes, I'm proud of my country. Yes, you can be proud of America, whatever. But an Earth flag, one Earth, one home, one responsibility. And that's where we're at. And it's about trying to turn people's minds around about embracing our finite planet as our only home and not fighting against each other all the time.
Oh, that's spectacular, Braam. I mean, I can't even tell you how in awe I am of the things that you've done, even on just this trip alone. I mean, aside from helping out the Brits, as you said, I mean, Andy, you have to realize 24 days, this is like total sensory deprivation. There's no visual horizon. There's nothing. And so after 24 days, you're kind of at the end of your line, I would think. But these guys just went up and helped another team. It's just mind-blowing to me. And if everyone can just take away a little bit of this, the world would be such a better place, Braam. I am just in total awe of everything that you've accomplished in that sense.
I'm tired.
You're
I'm
tired, right?
man.
You know, now all the times that I don't even want to go to the store,
right?
Like, and here my man has been running.
I want to run home from your house right now. Like I'm gonna leave my car here.
Barefoot.
Barefoot, yes, and barefoot. Thank you, Braam.
Oh, Braam, I can't even tell you. I am just in complete awe. So my final question for you is, I have to ask you, of all of your accomplishments, what do you feel is the greatest achievement that you've accomplished?
Well, that's a question. I think the greatest achievement that I've accomplished and am continuing to do, and will continue to do through the DOT app, is giving young people hope for the future. It's not about the Great Wall of China or the coastline or what we're going to do next or Antarctica and all of that. And it's about showing young people on this earth that there is hope if we all tackle it together, if we all get involved and do one thing together. That for me is my greatest accomplishment, but as said, it's not accomplished yet, it's ongoing. For me, that's what it's about.
I'll tell you, Braam, we're giving you a round of applause here. It's completely flawed by you. Braam, what an amazing experience. Thank you so much for coming on and talking about it. I am totally in love with you. And the fact that you let your chickens sleep in your house is another awesome thing. I have to tell you, because I have chickens. I love my chickens. But man, yeah, it's the best picture. I have to put this picture up. Braam's got a picture of his dogs sleeping on their individual beds, and on one of the beds, the dog beds, is his chicken just completely laid out.
It's better than the picture of him sleeping with the baby rhino.
That's an epic picture, man. That's a tough picture. But, Braam, thank you so much for really coming on our show and just speaking to us about this. And thank you so much for everything you do. You really, really give us hope for humanity as a whole. I think if everybody took just a fraction of what you do and actually, put it into practice, the world would be a much, much different place. Thank you so much for everything you do.
It's a huge, huge pleasure to be on the show, even getting up at this ungodly hour in South Africa.
Yes, and thank you. It's not even, people understand, for those of you listening live tonight, it is not even 5 a.m. yet in South Africa. And my man just, got up at 4 a.m. to talk to us here in the U.S. And thank you for that alone. I mean, that alone is an achievement, because I am fully not functional before 7 a.m. in any way, shape, or form.
Well, that's okay. He's going to go run a marathon.
Yeah, he's going to try to go run and
This is a warm-up.
No, I'm not. I'm going back to bed. I think, guys, if I could just give you a wonderful little anecdote that Jane Goodall, she's also affectionately known as the Chimp Lady. She was sitting in my living room last year, and we were having a conversation, and she cited that amazing Native American Indian saying where she said, we did not, I forget who said it, but this chief, I think, always said, we did not inherit the earth from our forefathers, we have borrowed it from our children. And Jane said, we haven't borrowed it, we've stolen it. Because when you borrow something, you give it back in the same condition you found it in. So that's quite a big ask, but that's my challenge to all of us out there. How do we make that right? And again, it comes back to, if we all just do one thing, we can really fix kind of a mess that we've made in the name of consumption and greed. And I think Gandhi put it so eloquently, be the change you want to see in the world.
Absolutely. Braam, amazing. I am totally floored. I'm so glad we had the opportunity to speak with you. We're truly honored. Both Andy and I are just completely in awe of everything you've done, and you have inspired us each to at least do one thing. That's all it meant. Do one thing. Please, if you take anything away from this, just do one thing, because as Mr. Gandhi just said, be that change, as Braam just said.
Starting tomorrow, because I'm taking a nice nap tonight.
Because you're tired already.
Start this over tomorrow.
Braam, thank you so much. Please go rest. Get ready for the day ahead of you. Thank you so much for coming and joining us here in Urban Jungles Radio. I hope at some point, maybe next year, you can come and update us again on all the amazing achievements you've done. I'm sure at this point you'll run back to the moon and back at this point, or something to that extent. Well, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you, Braam.
Thanks, guys.
I am your butterfly. I need your protection.